based on our knowledge. These tools are trained with language that we produced. When I say we, I mean humans, right? That we produced. The AI tools don't take input. They don't take, content that they're trained on from rocks and trees, and they take it from human production, right?
Yeah.
So to say artificial intelligence, I mean, it's
Yeah.
our intelligence. It's language that we've created that we're training a machine to use, but it's not really artificial. It's us. It's maybe not used in a perfect way yet, but it's our intelligence. So really to refer to it as machine intelligence, where it's really a machine
Mhm.
interpreting human intelligence, makes more sense to me. So I haven't heard that, but I'm glad to hear it.
Where literacy evolves with technology and language proficiency. This is the Multiliterate Mind podcast with Dr. Liza Trejo and Marnina Falk Colman.
Hello and welcome to the Multiliterate Mind. My name is Marnina Falk Colman, and I am joined by my colleague Liza Trejo.
Hi, Marnina. How are you
Hi.
doing?
Hi, Liza. It's good to be back in the studio with you today. For those of our audience who have not heard our podcast or watched it before, together we're exploring how language proficiency, multiliteracy, and human communication are evolving in an AI-driven world. So I'm going to kick it off to Liza to introduce our guest. We're really excited that today we're joined by Alan Woodall. So welcome, Alan. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad to be here today.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
Liza, do you want to tell us a little bit about our guest?
I'd love to. Absolutely. So, Alan R. Woodall III is an assistant professor of teaching of Spanish. I'm sorry, of teaching. Do over. Alan R. Woodall III is an assistant professor of teaching of Spanish in the Department of World Languages and Literatures at the University of Memphis. Alan holds an MA in Applied Hispanic Linguistics from New York University and is completing a PhD in Applied Linguistics at the University of Memphis. His research interests include digital literacies, AI and language education, and computational approaches to discourse, language analysis, and second language acquisition. Whew, that was a mouthful. You might have to say that in plain English for the rest of us. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But we're so glad you're here, Alan. And actually, Alan was recommended by a friend, a client actually, and friend who had heard your work. I guess you've worked with some of her teachers maybe, and so she recommended you for the podcast. I'm really glad this connection happened.
Yeah, me too. Really excited to be here. I've listened to a few of the episodes already, and I'm excited to see what we get to talk about today.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we just usually like to start by asking kind of how did you come to be where you are and who you are today as a language learner and AI user?
Yeah, sure. So, when I was in college, I was an applied mathematics major, so drastically different from what I do now. And my professor at the time was able to convince me to pursue a minor in Spanish, and then I took a linguistics course, and I realized that, language and mathematics are not different at all. In fact, they're similar in many ways. And so it sort of gave me a new trajectory to my career, and I found how to use what I'd learned through applied mathematics in a meaningful way for me. And through that, I got to see the world. And then after coming back and teaching for a year, the AI boom happened, right? And
Yeah.
suddenly AI is everywhere all at once. And my initial feeling was, okay, well, this seems like the future. Let's make sure that my students know how to use it right.
I like that. That's a great, good takeaway. I think a lot of teachers are feeling that way right now. I think a lot of parents, I know myself as a parent, just as a human in the workforce right now, I think a lot of us are wondering that. So it's very timely to have you on here.
Absolutely.
So, could you tell us a little bit about what you think artificial intelligence is best suited for now in world languages, and then maybe what that might look like in the future?
Yeah. So in my courses, it really depends on which course I'm teaching, right? So if you have a student in, let's say, a 1000 level course, the first course in the sequence, AI might be good for creating short vocabulary lists, right? Language that they use in everyday life. But it's really not good for a conversation partner yet because there's no conversation to have, right? Like if I say, hello, how are you? if I don't know how to respond to that yet, it's hard to have a conversation partner. Then as students become more advanced, a conversation partner is really a critical role that AI can play. So you have students that have sort of that affective filter where they come to a classroom and they're nervous because they don't have the best social skills, or they're nervous because they don't feel confident in the language and they don't participate as much as other students might. And unfortunately, that impacts their proficiency in the long term. So AI tools being a tool at home where I can practice my language skills without judgment, without fear, without that social pressure, that really becomes an important role for AI at the intermediate level, is that conversation partner, right? And then in advanced courses, it really takes off. AI, supplies so many different roles, so whether it's through the writing process or a conversation partner, or developing whatever that language is, like Spanish in my case, for specific purposes, for their career purposes, for their profession. Starting to personalize the content that they learn so that they get what's best for them, and it becomes sort of an individualized tool to give them only and exactly what they need for their academic pursuits. So it changes from course to course. I think that's a pillar, really important pillar to recognize first, is that it doesn't look the same in every course or in every context. Yeah,
I love that, and I love that I'm hearing you, like, say how AI is growing with the students, just, like, as their language proficiency, as their literacy in the language they're learning grows, so too does that AI use. And I think that that's a really cool, you even talked about that specific purposes, because I think on a global scale, that idea of multilingualism and learning language for a purpose, whether that is for entering a workforce using it, or whether that is for connecting in a community where you live, whatever that might be, being able to have AI meet you where you are for that is fascinating to me.
yeah,
And I really love how you emphasize that.
yeah,
Yeah, and I thank you, Marnia. That
Yeah.
was such a good that helped me even understand what you said, Alan. That was great. It's hard to pay attention sometimes. So, anyway, I was noticing that your work that you've been doing, the research that you've been doing, is very much along the lines of, correct me if I'm wrong, but very much along the lines of developing, I guess I would call it like an AI literacy, basically, and what that would
absolutely.
actually look like hands-on in a language class, for example. And it's something that other guests have kind of touched on or mentioned, but we haven't delved into it a lot yet. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI literacy is the perfect term, actually, what I use in my research to refer to it, and it is, a core digital literacy moving forward. When people think about AI, I think they don't really think about the individual components that go into using it as a tool. And really, there are two main parts, right? There's the input and the output. And so you have this input where you have to learn to prompt, right? That's one critical aspect of AI literacy, is the ability to prompt effectively. So you have students when they start using AI, and I find it funny, most of my students have never used AI before in the class, which I'm always so baffled to find out
Really?
because, I think we
Even
as
like
educators.
upper level students.
Right, yeah, even at upper
Wow.
levels, yeah, students will tell me, I've never used AI before," and I'm just blown away because all of us as professors are so concerned about students using it for everything, and then you find out a lot of them have never used it at all.
I am
So,
genuinely surprised to hear that.
yeah,
So you're talking about upper level college students, and they've said they've never used AI at all, or just
yeah.
never in the classroom?
No, never, some never at all, others not in the classroom. There are more now than, let's say, a year ago, and even more then than a year before that, that have used it before, but no, I still get a lot of students,
Wow.
whether it's,
Okay.
intermediate or advanced, yeah.
So we're all
Um,
learning together, genuinely. Well,
yeah,
it's like kind of what you said. All the professors, all the teachers were like, "Oh my God, how do we use this effectively?" But
yeah,
maybe we're all figuring it out together.
yeah,
My
absolutely,
follow-up
and
to that, oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, well, I mean, that's a really important thing as well, is that we are learning to use it together. No one's an expert yet, right?
Mm.
So it's a fun to be part of the learning experience with my students. They're not the only ones learning. I am as well. And then apart from prompting, the other part is like the discernment, right? So when you get the output, do I trust it? Do I not trust it? How do I know how to trust it? How do I, ethically interact with the tool so that I call it critical discernment, right? When you can
Mhm.
critically analyze the output that you're given and have the knowledge to adopt what you feel and what you know is correct and good for you and reject what you see as problematic.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like hit the nail on the head of my big fear of like, what do we know is real? What can we rely on? And that discernment of being able to understand what you're putting in and what you're getting out. And if you're the one that's doing it and you're unique in your institution, I know you're speaking just for yourself, not your
Right.
institution and for only the work that you do.
Right.
Are there spaces where they're using it beyond your classroom or you are really like uniquely the one encouraging it in your department or in your school?
I think that I think that stances on AI use in higher education range drastically across the
100%.
board. And so I have colleagues, close colleagues and friends that, aim to ban AI completely in their courses and others that say use it for everything, just tell me how you used it.
Uh-huh.
So I think that it varies dramatically from one professor to another. And I think that that's slowly but surely changing. The ones who at the beginning were very adamant about banning AI in classrooms have seen, at least in part, the utility that it has in certain contexts.
Uh-huh.
But I do think that there's an increasing number of us that want to use AI in our classrooms. At the beginning, I felt sort of one of the few, and now I feel one of the many.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
oh,
exciting. And I feel like what did you say, critical discernment? Or was it critical
mhm.
AI discernment or
No,
critical
no.
output discernment? What was the
Yeah,
term
no.
that you used?
I just use critical discernment as the term to refer to this because it's more than just critical analysis, right? Because it's not something that comes from this third place, right? It's not something that comes from another human where you're critically analyzing. So it's personalized to you from this tool. So I kind of feel the need to distinguish it from other types of critical analysis. But yeah.
Well, I'm curious, is that a term that you've just kind of coined that expression, or does that exist somewhere in the literature? Because I kind of feel like you're giving words to this conversation that we're trying to have that maybe we haven't all even had the language to use about this tool yet and about this type of literacy. So I guess I'm trying to understand. It's almost like you're actually trying to create some of this language that we didn't even know we needed yet. Am I understanding you?
Sure, yeah. As far as I've read, I haven't seen the term critical discernment. If it's out there and someone has already coined it, kudos and credit to you. But I have not seen it talked about. I have heard, critical analysis of output, but I think that it's something really unique. It's not like any other type of critical thinking skill. And so, naming what you know is really important, right? And so we're starting to see that there's this new phenomenon, this new act, and it doesn't really have a lot of language defining it yet. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think that defining this as we go and sort of identifying its core components and familiarizing ourselves with the language that we give those components is really crucial.
That is fascinating. I feel like so many people are going to be excited to have some language to use about this conversation that we've been having. Maybe more people will join in the conversation, I feel like language, I don't know. I guess it's almost like there's so much power in language. When we actually finally give something a name or a term for it, then it gives us the ability to explore it even further and even and push back on it, come up with other theories. I don't know. This is I'm excited about what you're doing. Tell us a little bit more about your research. I feel like I remember there was a kind of a continuum of what you called something like no artificial intelligence to compute or full artificial intelligence. And I think a lot of us have been talking about this binary, should I use it or should I not? And it seemed like you were defining that continuum, that piece in
Yeah.
the middle that's really so important. Am I understanding that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So there are sort of two types of research that I do here is like the formal publication style research, and then there's sort of action research, which is like what I use in my classroom to develop my own knowledge and understanding of how students interact with the tools and how they can be beneficial and detrimental. So I'll focus on that part of my research. What I've done in the past couple of years is I've experimented with traditional assignments that I already had in my courses. So I'll take an advanced conversation and composition course as an example. I had a writing assignment, several writing assignments, right, where students could they could prepare for the writing assignment, then submit their draft, then revise it, and they could do it as often as they wanted to get a higher grade until they got a grade they were happy with, right? And instead of carrying that on, and just saying, hey, you can't use AI at all on this writing assignment, but you can on these, which is what I started, right?
Hmm.
That was my initial plan was, okay, I'll give you certain assignments for writing that you can and certain that you can't. And that didn't work as well as I'd hoped. So I instead split these bigger assignments into three components, right? They have this preparation where they come up with a concept map. So this can be a visual map where they have these, idea bubbles, and they connect their main ideas to the main topic, and they list vocabulary and concepts that'll be important, but there's no grammar, right? And then they give me an introduction with that. What is your writing going to be about eventually when you write it? Not now, but later.
Hmm.
And it's AI optional. So if they want to use AI, they can, but they're not required to, and it's not banned or anything like that, right? So there's nothing that they're writing other than an introduction, which is really 4 to 5 sentences anyway. So I'm not concerned about the AI doing the work for them, because if it writes an introduction, fine, they're going to have to write it in the second step anyway. So it's not a big deal, right? And so it's this low stakes preparatory assignment, and they can use AI or not. Great. They usually don't. Second part of the assignment is the draft, right? This is their original draft. And on this component of the assignment, you cannot use AI. So I'm very specific that AI cannot be used. And students have followed, to my knowledge, I have no suspicions of students, using AI on this when they
Hmm.
shouldn't have. But they write this initial draft, often with many, many mistakes and errors, which is what I encourage, right? Like, you don't need to be perfect to communicate. I mean, look at us. The three of us are speaking our native language, and I'm sure that we've already messed up and will continue to mess up for the rest of the.
Yes, I think I lost the train of thought already once so far.
So the second, they cannot use it at all, and then the third one they're required to. So the third one is the final version. So after they've turned in a couple of drafts without the AI, where I've given them feedback, traditional writing method, right? Then they go to the final version, and the final version they are required to use AI. So not just optional, but they must use it. And the bulk of the evaluation of that assignment is on the engagement with the tool itself. So they have to copy and paste the full thread with the AI chatbot, so their prompts, the output, all of that. Then they have to do a reflection video about what they took from the process. What did you learn about your writing through this process? What did you learn that AI could help you do, and what was AI not helpful in doing for you?
Mm.
And the reflection ended up being, I mean, most students turned in a reflection of 10 or more minutes, right? And they could do it in whatever language they wanted to. And so because the bulk of the evaluation for that assignment came from those things and not the final version itself, then the AI tool, even if it did help them write the final version, the final draft, even if it did, the bulk of the evaluation didn't come from that. It came from their experience, their reflection on that process and how it helped them individually. So
Wow.
splitting up things into various components where some use AI and some don't, and sometimes it's optional, has really been the Goldilocks zone for me, for, for students to use it ethically.
Something that just reminded me of is like, you're not cold banning or doing hard, fast do or don't. And often with students or with anyone, giving that freedom of discernment and not doing a black and white rejection, but setting boundaries of use this and don't at different times. I noticed that creates like a safety and also creates an understanding and a trust.
Yeah,
Whereas if I were to tell my students no AI ever, they're going to try to get away with it
right.
rather than, oh, use it for this or this or that, but not here. Then I'm kind of a partner with you. And I love
Exactly.
how you've shown them in that writing process where it's appropriate and where it's not, and kind of unpacked your assignments in order to do that. So I'm wondering, like, how did you get to that? Because that's
Sure.
like
Yeah.
a
Well,
lot of thinking that I'm like, my mind is a little blown because as a teacher who taught both ELA and English as a second language and Spanish, like how do you get to breaking down the writing process and deciding what needs to be human and what can be AI? Because that's really cool.
Sure, that's a great question, and the answer really lies in the first part of your question with the
Mhm.
collaboration, the partnership, right? The first semester when ChatGPT was the only AI tool, right? Before
Mhm.
before anything else came out and everyone was ChatGPT crazy, which many of us still are. I did this research study through a normal semester where I had these 16 writing prompts where students had to write 8 to 10 sentences each, right? And that, apart from the midterm and final, that was really the only writing that they had to do in the course. And for the writing, they wrote an original paragraph and then they engaged with ChatGPT and asked for error correction. So give me
Mhm.
a revised version of this paragraph without errors and then explain every error to me and the underlying concept behind it. And
Ugh.
so this was a prompt that I engineered myself and gave to them to use and said, hey, after you write your original, use this exact prompt and then give me your final version. And so that's what I did the first semester and it worked really well. But I noticed that students without that prompt were lost. Like they didn't know where to start prompting. Help me revise. Which is,
Exactly.
I mean, a great starting point, but we
Yeah.
need more than that, right? I tell them, imagine if you have a personal assistant or a tutor. Are you going to go to your tutor and say, help me revise? Or are you
Mm-mm.
going to say, I think I have problems here and here. This is what I find difficult. Can you help me understand why, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you need to visualize this tool as that person, right? It is that tutor. It is that helper there to partner with and understand. So through that semester, while I was doing this research study, I suddenly understood that it wasn't about the output only. It was also about the prompting. And the best
Mm.
way for students to learn how to do that is to take assignments and require the use of AI and focus on the process over the product, that the final
Mhm.
version wasn't the most important part. It was the process and how it could help you get there. And I think that that's a tool that they take on after the course and use in other things as well.
We spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about proficiency.
We sure do. But knowing about proficiency and actually applying it can sometimes feel like two different things.
I know. That's exactly why Avant created Avant Advance.
Advance is an on demand course that deepens your understanding of proficiency levels while giving you practice analyzing authentic student writing samples in your selected language. It's available in 10 languages and counting.
Amazing. So you're not just learning about proficiency, you're practicing how to interpret it with confidence and given strategies to apply the learning directly to your classroom.
You can even earn up to 15 PDUs, and you'll earn a certificate upon completion of the course.
Learn more at avantassessment.com/advance.
I love this.
I'm hearing you say so many things that are, I think, needed, really needed right now. And because a lot of teachers, that I work with across the whole country and even sometimes outside of the country are saying things like, I don't want my kids to forget how to think, to learn, to not be able to think for themselves. And so that
Mm.
led me to the question of what's the difference between deep processing and shallow processing? And I feel like you have found a way to incorporate that into the process. And I don't know if that ties into what you're calling critical discernment or if this is another shade or another nuance of the research that you're engaging in. But it sounds to me like you're having them investigate something using ChatGPT or whatever AI tool they happen to use, and then kind of as the part of the requirement, forcing them to think critically about the response. Is that okay?
So
Wow.
thinking critically about the prompts that they give it, thinking critically about the output that they're given, and thinking critically about what they adopt and reject and the why. And I tell my students all the time, and I've told a couple colleagues as well, I hear a lot that critical thinking is less important now because of AI, and I couldn't disagree more. I think that critical thinking is more important now than it ever has been.
Ooh. I love
And
that.
yeah, and so I think that creating these sort of assignments, creating these outlets where students can
Mhm.
exercise their agency to develop, what is best for them, what they can adopt, and what is not good for them, and what they should reject. Developing that agency is really core. It's crucial to this. And so I think that that's the most important here. I think that critical thinking is more important than it's ever been before, and that's what I focus on with these sort of assignments.
Wow, Alan, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marnina. Were you going to
No,
say
I'm just
something?
like,
Yeah, I know, right? We're kind of like, ah. Well, you actually led me almost directly to my next question, which is, a lot of our guests have talked about both language and AI as a form of access. So I was curious if you agreed or disagreed, but you put a twist on it. You said agency.
Mhm.
So you threw something new in the mix at me there, Alan. I was going with access and you brought up agency. So can we discuss this a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say agency, what I mean is that they are required through these assignments to take ownership of the process because it extends beyond this classroom. It's not a tool that you use to do an assignment for this class and never touch again, right? This is a means for you to do all kinds of things personally and professionally and academically that extend way beyond this assignment. So giving them agency early on and saying, listen, you are the agent of this process. You decide what you prompt, you decide what you adopt, and you decide what you reject. And ultimately, that means that you bear the responsibility of those actions as well. So the consequences of adopting or rejecting or whatever also fall on your shoulders. And I think that that's so important to emphasize for them beyond the classroom is that they are the ones who decide. And whether we ban it or encourage it or whatever, they're going to continue using it. So to learn that the consequences run deep and that they have to understand those to be, an effective agent in the process is really important.
I really love how you're saying this idea of agency and ownership because I think we're in a world where it's so important to raise people to learn how to discern what's fact from fiction, what
Mhm.
we can believe, what we can trust, what's real, alongside finding their voice in that landscape of we're in a reality that had never existed before. And we have, like Liza said, this idea of access to so much. It can also feel like it's doing the work for us, but you're saying, no, we're still doing that work. We're in control of it. It's on us to do it responsibly.
Right.
So I really love that you brought in that idea of agency and responsibility because I
Right.
haven't heard someone talk about it in that way before.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, I really
absolutely.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really feel like you're bringing out, highlighting things that I'm not hearing yet in the world language and multilingual community. And I might not be listening to the right podcasts, but I mean, I feel like you're saying something different, and it's exciting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to you more. Tell us more.
Yeah, I don't want to discount the concern there. So obviously there is a concern of if students have access to this and there are hallucinations or when AI gives you output that's not accurate or that's off the wall or
Mhm.
cite sources that aren't real, that is
Mhm.
still a real and imminent threat. But teaching students that they need to have the knowledge, a priori, like before beginning the process,
Mhm.
really teaches them that it's not about what the tool gives you, it's about what you can do with what the tool gives you. And so teaching them
Mhm.
not to take everything that they're given is sort of new for them because when they've used
Mhm.
AI in the ones that have used AI, when they've used it in the past, they sort of take and use, right? So they take whatever they're given and use it without editing it and sort of breaking that mindset like, oh yeah, it's great that you use AI, but really you need to focus on what you get from it and that you're able to tell whether it's accurate or not is really crucial.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the question we've come down to, and that I've personally been thinking about a lot. I imagine you too, Marnina, is what is real and what is artificial, first of all, and then what is, real or human intelligence versus what is artificial or machine intelligence. And I'm wondering, if you're seeing, I've recently been hearing more people say machine intelligence. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering, is that a change in the language in order to shift away from the idea of artificial intelligence? Because I don't know. It's just a thought I had. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things here. The first is that artificial, I think, is in some ways a misnomer. These tools
Mm,
are based on our knowledge. These tools are trained with language that we produced. When I say we, I mean humans, right?
yeah.
That we produced. AI tools don't take input. They don't take content that they're trained on from rocks and trees and like they take it from human production, right?
Yeah.
So to say artificial intelligence, I mean, it's
Yeah.
our intelligence. It's language that
Huh.
we've created that we're training a machine to use, but it's not really, artificial. It's us. It's maybe not used in a perfect way yet, but it's our intelligence. So really to refer to it as machine intelligence, where it's really
Mhm.
a machine
Mhm.
interpreting human intelligence, makes more sense to me.
Mhm.
So I haven't heard that, but I'm glad to hear it. I think that that's a good distinction to make. And the other thing is that what you're talking about, telling students that there's a difference between human intelligence and artificial or machine intelligence, or what can it do well and what are the dangers. I found that when I started teaching that,
Mhm.
students weren't as receptive, and so I changed how I did it about a year ago. And now in my advanced courses we do debates on it, and so we'll watch a video about intelligence and we'll watch a video about consciousness not related to AI whatsoever, and then I'll split the room into against AI in education and for AI in education.
Mhm.
And then I let them debate each other. And they come up with all of these things that we've been talking about on
Mhm.
their own. So they know what AI is good for. They know what the dangers are.
Mhm.
Just giving them, again, the agency, the ability to decide for themselves has really been the most effective tool. And then they'll fight. I mean, they'll fight amongst themselves. I don't have to tell them that it's dangerous. They'll tell each other that it's dangerous. So, leaving it to them to decide and sort of battle out has been a really effective strategy as well.
I love
And
that
they
you
end up
say
really meeting in the middle, like, really, the both teams against and for end up sort of gravitating toward each other and meet in the middle.
I love that you're bringing that, like, that idea of critique of AI and doesn't have to come from you. And we found that in a conversation we had recently with former students of mine,
Mhm.
were the most reluctant with AI, and they're the
Mhm.
generation that grew up with it.
Mhm.
So I guess that leads me to, like, if they are hesitant or that is that push and pull, how do you require AI and also make it comfortable for those that are like, "Oh," because I'm seeing a pushback in
Mhm.
Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I'm not good at labeling the other generations, but, like,
Some of those
the
generations.
digital natives, if you will, that
Mhm.
were raised with it, I'm finding are even more critical, which is surprising to me.
Yeah, that's actually a really
Yeah.
astute observation. I've noticed the same thing that students at this age, especially my students right now, so that's
Mhm.
what, 18 to 25, really, the ones that are against AI are the strongest stances I've heard. I mean, they really are really reluctant and hesitant to use the tools for anything, but especially for academic context. I think
Oh,
part of it
really?
is fear. There's
Mhm.
a fear of being judged or a fear of being punished for using AI in certain ways, and so they're
Mm.
fearful of that, and they also feel a need to, like, show that they have the competence and intelligence to do whatever task is at hand, right? And so, those that are against it, not all of them, obviously, but, like, a lot of students that are against it sound that way, and they're the biggest proponents of not using AI in education. So I found that surprising as well. But as they tend to have discussions with each other, they do tend to level out a little bit. I will
Mm.
say that I was worried. I was concerned at the beginning when I started using AI in the classroom for assignments. I told students the first semester, if you don't feel comfortable using AI, let me know and we can have a conversation about how to get around it.
Mhm.
I had one student talk to me about it, and that student ended up using it anyway, and then I haven't had another student say anything since. And so even though there are students that are reluctant or hesitant, and there have been a couple times when students express that, I tell them, you're go un for better or worse, AI is going to be an integral part of your life, professionally, personally, and academically. And so you really have to develop the competency to use this tool for the future, whatever career you choose to pursue. It's not really optional. In my opinion, I don't think it's really an option at this point. I think in 10 to 20 years, AI is going to be in almost every aspect of life. And so if you pass on students and say, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it. If you don't want to use AI, don't worry about it. You don't need to use it. You never need to learn it." And then they're thrown into a career where they have to use it and they're not educated about how to use it ethically or effectively.
Yeah.
That falls on me as their instructor. That was a teaching opportunity that I had and discarded because the student was reluctant or hesitant. And I think that's irresponsible on our end as professors.
Well, I'm really glad that you talked about the future because that's another question that I have. And I think it's based on your other research of using AI in editing, publishing research, that sort of a field. Because I personally I'm a writer, and I've been playing around with using ChatGPT to help me with certain aspects of the editing process. But I'm wondering, well, what counts as it still being my work?
Mhm.
Where do I, will I, am I going to have to cite edited by ChatGPT? Will we ever be able to cite uh, some sort of AI as an original source, or is it always going to be an extra source? I don't know. Those are some of the questions I have. Which one would you like to answer first?
I Let's see. Let's start with the citation. I think that there's a convention yet to be established for this, and I think that it will be crucial moving forward. I usually list it as an acknowledgement if I really haven't used it all that many times in things that I've sent for review,
Mhm,
but an acknowledgement that AI was used in the editing, but not content development stage of this
mhm.
of this manuscript or whatever it may be. So the citation thing, we'll see. I'm not entirely sure how, journals are going to decide that decision.
Yeah.
Journals are going to make that decision, not us, lowly people on the ground here. So we'll see. We'll see what they decide. But absolutely, one thing I tell my students, and that's in our departmental AI policy, is that when you use AI, cite it. Tell me how you use it. Be transparent. There's no need to fear judgment. There's no need to fear punishment. When you use it in a way that I think is unethical, I'm going to have a conversation with you about it, but I'm not going to punish you for it. I'm not
Mhm,
going to make you feel guilty for using it because who am I to be an authority on the matter? It's new for all of us. None of us are experts yet.
Mm.
And so I tell them just be transparent, and they are. Be transparent about how you use the tool and list exactly how you used it, and then we'll have a conversation about it. Your other question was how is AI used in research, like writing? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, I think that isn't that what one of the things that you've been studying is how to use
Yeah.
AI better? I don't know if it's for actually just coding the data or
Mhm.
how you're using it, but yeah, I was very curious about that. And I think a lot of people, even if you're not a researcher, so to speak, at a university, that doesn't mean you're not researching in your classroom every
Right.
single day. When you see a problem and you
Right.
come up with a potential solution and then you try it and then you just reflect, did it work or did it not? What do I need to study next? I mean, that's research. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I
absolutely.
just want to make sure everyone feels a part of this conversation. But yes, I
Yeah.
am curious more specifically at the university level.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as there's a project I'm working on right now about research and methodological literacies in faculty that are not tenured faculty. So faculty that don't have a research component to their contract, but that still could use research to inform their own teaching methodologies. They could use as, institutional currency for, rewards or, like acknowledgement and uh, reconocimiento recognition
Uh-huh.
of sort of what,
Could
the
use some
work that they're doing.
translanguaging there, Mr. Alan Woodall
Yeah,
III.
it happens sometimes, but very rarely I'll have a word and I can't remember, in English what it's supposed to be. But, yeah, so I'm working on that right now, and it's sort of difficult for people in that position that are teaching track faculty or some that are, they call them different things at different institutions. So, um Some are called practice track or something like that. So
Mhm.
whatever non-research track faculty is what I'm referring to.
Ah, gotcha.
Often it's difficult for them to juggle so many things, right? So we teach four teaching loads. So we teach 4 courses in the fall and 4 in the spring usually, plus service responsibilities, which may be curriculum development or whatever it may be at that institution. And it's hard for us to generate research. It's hard for us to plan a research study, do the study, analyze the data, report the findings, with all of the other things that we have going on without the time and resources allocated specifically for
Sounds
research.
like what
And
classroom teachers struggle with, right, Marnina? I mean, you've mentioned it a couple times.
100%.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like how do I find the time? I feel like I'm hearing you say, how do they find the time to do all of these things, you know?
yeah,
So,
exactly. Exactly. And so for those that question, how am I going to find the time to do this? AI can really step in and be a supporting tool there as long as as long as you're able to critically discern what you're given from it, it's a really effective tool. So for example, when I do research studies in my classrooms, I still teach a rather full teaching load and I have heavy service responsibility. So to do that research, I still need that extra help. And so I'll say, listen, this is what I want to do. Here's a link to an article that I read that I'd really like to replicate. I want to replicate it for my classroom. You know what my classroom looks like. You've helped me work on the syllabus. You've helped me create the course calendar. Help me devise a study, a simple study that can help me determine these things, right? And it'll give me a research plan. And then I'll be like, okay, I really like this part. I hate this part, whatever, right? And I'll decide what I take and what I reject,
mhm,
but I don't have to come up with it from scratch, right? And that saves me so much time. And then as long as whatever the content is that I'm analyzing is digital, so as long as it's, writing, for example, digital writing is easy to analyze computationally. I can have, if I don't want to write the code myself, which I can, but it takes time and it takes some know-how, right? Setting up coding for the first time. I can say, hey, I would like to use these tools with Python. I want you to write a program that will do this with my data. 30 seconds, I have a program that I can run to analyze the data from that research study without having given any of the data to AI, because there's also a privacy issue there, right? So we don't
Mhm.
want to hand over our data to AI and have it do everything. That's not the goal, right? But if I say, hey, I want to use this coding tool to analyze this student writing, please write me a code that will do that, then I'm not giving it any sensitive data. It's giving me something useful and I can, bypass writing it myself and save hours, very, very likely. If
Mhm.
we're talking about coding, that's hours of time that I've saved by doing it. And so I can still perform these research responsibilities, duties really, without allocating tons of time to them. And that's really important, at least for people in higher education, because so often research really is a currency of socioeconomic and sociopolitical status in higher
yes.
education, right? So
I agree
those
100%.
of you that have published, goodbye. You're not as important
Mhm,
as the rest of us that do
mhm.
research, which is we know is not true. All of us, and no matter tenure track, teaching track, whatever, we know that's not true.
Or classroom teacher, or
Or
kindergarten teacher,
or
or
K-12.
world ML teacher,
Uh-huh.
or math teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so that's the other part of it. For those that are K-12, those are not in higher education, have a really unique perspective now. They're in really the ideal place to do classroom inquiry and find out what student perspectives are and what the learning process is doing. And so these tools can really be a way to support them in doing these, these action research projects.
I love that you're talking about AI as like that thought buddy, that tutor, but not just in how to communicate or how to use the languages that you're speaking or learning, but also how to do your work while maintaining that agency. You're really modeling both in the writing assignments you give and how you conduct research projects, that you're thinking, what is the purpose for me? Where is my voice? Where am I as a person supposed to use this? And now, what can this tool do that lightens my load, but does not take it away from being mine? And I think
Mhm.
that you've hit the nail on the head is like a struggle for especially our K-12 students finding that, like, or any students of like who are not using AI as regularly, is where is my voice? Where is my responsibility? What do I need to do myself versus what can a tool do? So I'm just
Mhm.
like, I'm very interested in hearing, like, how do you even teach someone to make those decisions if this is something that you've come to really well that I think is a struggle for many, myself
Yeah,
included.
that's a great point. One thing surprisingly, and this is likely not consistent, but surprisingly, when I've had conversations about AI tools and the ethics behind using them for certain things with the AI tools themselves, they've actually given me a pretty good, guidance on what is ethical and what
Mhm.
is not. Oh, yeah, I can help you do this, but I shouldn't help you do this. So often just engaging with the tool
Oh.
and saying, hey, I want to do this thing with you. I want to collaborate with you on doing this thing. What would be ethical uses? What would be an ethical practice for me to
Oh.
do with you? And what would not be ethical? Or what would, you know, where would I be surrendering my voice or agency as a researcher or educator with you? And where would I not be? And it really gives fairly good
Mhm.
guidance with some critical discernment thrown in there to what you
I'll go
can.
back to critical discernment. I love it.
Right. Buzzword of the day.
Shameless plug
I
there.
love
Yeah.
it. Well, I think we're getting close to our time, although I feel like I could go on and on. I actually have multiple more questions to ask you. Well, this seems to happen almost every time, Marnina. I say, I have so many more questions I could ask you. And then we even have questions like we want to do the interview behind the interview, after the interview, because then we're still asking questions. But I guess that's what good, I guess that's the goal is to help us to become more curious, to
Yeah.
become more thoughtful, to use our agency appropriately and to help our students do the same thing. So I don't know if you could just leave us with some final advice or words, or maybe even just your final daydream for the future of AI and world languages. What would you say?
Yeah. I think that, one thing that's really important to take away is to address this topic more calmly and with an open mind.
Mm,
So many
mm,
people on both ends of the spectrum come in very, fast with lots of strong feelings, and we forget to listen to each other. We're talking about taking away human communication through these AI tools, and we're forgetting to communicate in the process about them, right? And so it's important now, and it's more important than ever to really listen to one another and sort of critically think about what these tools can help us do and help our students do, and what our role is as educators to really help them realize that. Because the future is AI. It's not about whether you
mm.
like it or dislike it or approve or disapprove. It's sort
That's
of a tool that's here to stay.
true. Yeah.
And so taking on that responsibility and acknowledging that it is our position, we are uniquely positioned to help students in that regard is just really important for us to remember.
Well, thank you so much. I have learned so much, and I think you have such valuable and unique knowledge to give as someone who is really on the grounds, forging that path of what does this look like in academia and how do we teach it. So I'm sure that our audience has questions, has thoughts as well. So I want to encourage everyone listening to this or watching this podcast anywhere you are
Mhm.
to like, to subscribe, to comment, to share, because the message that you have is really, really impactful and important
Yep.
as we start envisioning what AI looks like in the multilingual, multiliterate setting, and how do we forge towards a future that we don't yet know. So thank you so much.
So well
Really,
Absolutely.
said, everyone. Well said, Marnina. Well said, Alan. I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly.
thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting conversation. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to what people have to say about this as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All opinions expressed in this podcast and the comments are solely those of the individual and not necessarily those of Avant.